That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, I owe everyone a massive, massive thank you that has gone out there and got our Dynasty research book. I can't tell you how much work I put into that, and I truly appreciate all the nice messages. But what I ask for is, of course, I will say, it makes me feel good when you tell me how much you like the book. But please give me some constructive criticism, because I would love to be able to know how to improve my research for y'all to make it more applicable in your own Dynasty leagues and help you with trade, help you with draft strategy and your overall roster optimization. But here we are going to be diving into yet another chapter of our 2022 Dynasty research book. Here we are going to be looking at rookie hit rates based on different portions of the draft, based on different positions, how we can use these hit rates, and we can just shape our rookie draft strategy, as well as what's going to be very exciting and what we can do at the end of the video is we are going to be able to look at those 2021 class of rookies and identify some buy high, sell low players. But of course, before we get into it, if you have not gotten our Dynasty research book, over 100 pages of quality information, you can do so two different methods. The best way, by far and away, the best way for me, for you, for everybody, it's a win-win-win, is going and depositing $10 on Underdog Fantasy with promo code FLOCK. This is going to be for first-time depositors only. And if you deposit $10 on Underdog Fantasy with promo code FLOCK, you will get our Dynasty research book. You will get a month of our exclusive content over there on Locals, and they will match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to 100. So you're essentially getting them for free. And I promise you, nothing supports this channel more. That is the first way. You can find the link in the description, promo code FLOCK. And if you have already deposited on Underdog Fantasy, yet you want the Dynasty research book, you can find the Dynasty research book on flockfantasy.com. The link will also be down there in the description. But that should be it. Let's go through. Let's dive into this. And I need to explain how we are going to be looking at this data so everybody will understand it. So there are going to be a couple different pieces to look at. A, of course, you're going to have the players on the side. These are going to be players drafted from 2014 through 2020. I did not include the 2021 rookies in this research because if you look at what we are mapping out the initial overall Dynasty ADP provided by DLF, dynastyleaguefootball.com, from June of their rookie season to June after their rookie season to June after their second year. So we are getting a clear picture on how a player's Dynasty value has moved through the first 3 years of their NFL career. And what this is going to allow us to accomplish is A, figure out what positions should we be drafting at different ranges of our rookie drafts. B, what should the expected hit rate for those positions be? And C, should we be looking to possibly sell high or buy low on those players after year one? That's going to be, honestly, some of the most exciting things that we can get to near the end of this video. But I hope this makes sense for everybody that's going to be overall ADP. And the reason why I'm looking at overall ADP is A, it's much easier to track over a longer duration. And B, more importantly, different draft classes are valued differently. I mean, the perfect example of this is looking at 2016 versus 2017. I mean, here in 2016, the top players on the board, guys like Corey Coleman, Josh Doxson, Laquan Treadwell, guys you want nothing to do with. Compared to 2017, those top rookies, Leonard Fournette, Joe Mixon, Christian McCaffrey. And what's very interesting to see is Dynasty owners are pretty damn smart. They know which classes are going to be significantly stronger than others. So you have different evaluations for different top prospects. I mean, the rookie pick 101 in 2018 was Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley right away was the top 10 Dynasty pick before he stepped on the NFL field. Compared to the following season in 2019, Josh Jacobs was the rookie pick 101, and he was barely in the top 3 rounds. So it's going to be much easier for us to look at these players on an overall standpoint than it would be to say 101, 102, 103. It's going to be a lot more useful. But let's go through and let's break it down different chunks of the draft. And the first chunk we are going to be looking at will be the elite running back prospects. And here with elite running backs, the main takeaway is any chance you have to draft these guys, you better be drafting them. You better be going aggressively when you have the 101 in the 2017 draft, in the 2018 draft, in that 2016, in 2015, and you're able to go out there and get a Todd Gurley, a Leonard Fournette. I mean, even in 2020, I know Clyde Edwards-Helaire ended up being the 101, but Jonathan Taylor right there. And that's a perfect example of people in 2020 understanding that Jonathan Taylor, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I mean, both should be valued as those elite prospects. Of course, Clyde Edwards-Helaire maybe shouldn't have been, but it is what it is. It happened regardless. What's very notable is just the fact that you have 85% of these players gaining value after their rookie season. And they already started off extremely highly. I mean, you already had some of these players starting off as round 1 dynasty startup picks. Now, I will say that gain value after year 2 mark is probably not that useful to look at just for this group in particular, because both Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley technically lost value after year 2, but they went from having the dynasty ADP of like 1 overall to 2 overall, and then 2 overall to 3 overall. So really, it's not something we should be looking at. These players, great bets historically, and if we are looking at a couple guys that did not make this chart, last year, Najee Harris had an ADP of 19 to start us off. And Najee Harris gained value. So Najee Harris continuing this trend. So bump that gain value after year 1 markup to about 90%. Najee Harris is not going to be on the graph because we don't know what happens after year 2 with his value. But if we're looking at a running back today that fits in this mold, that gained value after 90% of their rookie seasons, you got Breece Hall. And with Breece Hall, we have to ask ourselves, is he propped up in this range based on his landing spot and wasn't a great prospect? Look at Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the only guy that busted. Or does Breece Hall check every single box? Is he that elite running back prospect that 9 times out of 10 is gaining value after year 1? That's who Breece Hall is. I am not going to hesitate to draft Breece Hall in the top 2 rounds of our dynasty startup drafts. If you have the rookie pick 101, you hold on to it tightly. If you don't have it, you trade for it aggressively. This is not a stance that I had before the NFL Combine because I wasn't expecting Breece Hall to go out there and show us that he had that prospect profile. But after the Combine, he clearly fits in with this group of players, and you're already seeing him be valued there. Those players don't lose value. Now let's go over to our next group. We are going to go over to the early round 1 running backs, the early round 1 wide receivers. And here I know that we have the elite running backs and no elite receivers. And the reason for that is the dynasty community is smart. They know it's much harder to project those wide receivers going into the NFL, and they're not going to value a rookie wide receiver ever as a first round startup pick before they played a snap in the NFL. So we really don't have those elite wide receiver prospects to look at. But if you're looking at these charts, what's very telling is, yet again, these running backs, fantastic bets. And I know people are probably getting annoyed, but trust me, the information changes drastically as we go through this. Now, if you're looking at these running backs, they gain value more often after year 1 and after year 2. So, and they also have a higher percentage chance of turning into a top 10 pick. And this should make sense. If you look at the running backs in this range, you have guys like Dalvin Cook, DeAndre Swift, Christian McCaffrey, Cam Akers, Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs. All these players are guys that check every single box. I would argue that if it wasn't for injuries, Darius Geis and Rashad Penny may be right there with them. I mean, really, you see those 2 players as the only guys losing value based on where they were drafted as rookies, and those were the 2 guys affected most by injury. So, all in on drafting running backs here yet again, and I'm not going to be looking to sell high on these players after they hit year 1, except if we do it with one thing in mind and one thing in particular. And this is a way that we can almost go and cheat Dynasty Fantasy Football. Now, if you were looking at the continued trend mark for these wide receivers, and of course, we go so in depth on our Dynasty Research book. We cover early round 2, mid round 2, late round 2, early round 3, mid round 3, late round 3, beyond. We cover so much. And these numbers change for every single round. It's very interesting. But for these round 1 wide receivers, there is a clear trend that if they gain value after their rookie season, they are going to continue to gain value after year 2. If they lose value after their rookie season, they're going to continue to lose value after year 2. This is not something we see with the wide receivers later. I'll give a spoiler alert for anybody who's about to read the book, but I think I have an explanation on why this may occur. Now, please give me your opinion, but my understanding would be that with these round 1 wide receivers, with these guys that go round 1 in the NFL draft that are valued as elite assets coming in right away in Dynasty, the expectation is for them to get on the field right away from Dynasty owners and their NFL teams that drafted them. So 90% of these players get on the field right away. And if they don't, that shows us that they failed those expectations, that they weren't talented enough to do so. There shouldn't be anybody ahead of them in the depth chart blocking that route because they wouldn't have drafted the receiver in round 1 to begin with. And if we are making excuses for a player that wasn't able to get on the field and be productive right away, like Laquan Treadwell after his rookie season, we already saw what he is. He had the opportunity and he did not take it. He's a bum. We already know that. So it's very interesting that if these players succeed in year 1 at the receiver position, they're probably very talented. And the complete opposite end of the spectrum, if they fail, you probably need to sell them right away. Not something that we see with wide receivers later on in rookie drafts. Possibly we'll go a little bit later on into round 2 in this video. I doubt it. Of course, you can find that in our book. But let's move on to a trade strategy that you could potentially have. Y'all know I said not really looking to sell these early round 1 running backs after they hit, except for one thing in particular. If you wanted to pivot off of these early round 1 running backs after they hit, let's look at players that were in this range last year. Someone like Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne were being drafted here. I mean, Najee Harris as an elite running back as well. If we were to sell these players, I'm looking for one thing and one thing in particular. We are looking for an early round 1 wide receiver prospect in that same draft class that gained an exponential amount of value after his rookie season, indicating he should continue on that same path. Examples of this would be trading Najee Harris for Jamar Chase, trading Javonte Williams plus a small piece for Jamar Chase, trading Javonte Williams. Now, after the Tyreek Hill trade, you can probably get a little bit more, but trading Javonte Williams for Jalen Waddle plus a small piece in the other direction. So there are some interesting moves that you could look to make in terms of taking running backs early and then pivoting off of them to the wide receivers that we know are elite after their rookie seasons. Love to know your opinion on that. And now let's go over to mid round 1. Here we are going to begin to see a little bit of a shift. Here running backs aren't nearly as appealing for draft prospects as they were at the beginning of round 1. I mean, you have running backs gaining on value less after year 1 than receivers, less after year 2. They don't have as good of a probability of turning into a top 10 dynasty pick. And yet again, I think I have a hypothesis for this. And my assumption is going to be that if you're looking at the running back prospects that get pushed up to the middle of round 1, these are guys that simply do not belong here. These are running backs with incomplete profiles that have red flags with their prospect profiles compared to these wide receivers that, I mean, probably are falling here just because there isn't the same level of demand for the receiver position that there will be at running back. So if you miss out on someone at the very top in early round 1, if you miss out on someone like a DeAndre Swift, if you miss out on someone like Rashad Penny, you shouldn't then be taking a player with an incomplete profile in Ronald Jones and Royce Freeman when there are still top level wide receiver prospects on the board. Now, if we go through and if we just highlight the running backs on this list, Chubb, Sankey, Michelle, Yeldon, Montgomery, Sanders, Jones, Freeman. Of course, there are a couple of running backs there that panned out. I mean, someone like Nick Chubb is the perfect example, but even with Nick Chubb, you're looking at him as a running back that did have red flags coming out of Georgia. He had the injury concern and the inability to catch passes. Of course, Nick Chubb has hit, perfectly fine in the NFL, but we're looking at a macro stance here. Now, one thing I want to point out with all those guys as well, just to kind of prove this point, of course, NFL draft capital is not everything, but none of these guys were even round 1 NFL draft picks. Whereas you go over to the wide receiver position, and there are some players that had elite level prospect profiles. I mean, looking at someone like CeeDee Lamb, where you know he's going to be a stud coming in right away. DJ Moore fits that mold as well. Michael Thomas, Justin Jefferson in this range. Once we get away from those bulletproof, can't miss running back prospects at the beginning of round one, you're seeing that wide receivers here, really look appealing. If we're going over to late round one, we have a couple running backs, almost evening it out. But I think at this point, mid to late round one, you probably should be leaning a little more heavily on your actual prospect evaluation and really just keeping in the back of your mind the fact that wide receivers are going to be falling here that probably have a complete profile based on the fact that the supply and demand is going to skew dynasty managers in the middle of round one to go running back. Now, if we get to this point, there's really not too much to point out in late round one besides the continued trend mark for these wide receivers yet again. 85% of these players, and this is a large sample, and over pretty much all around one, you have about 75% of these prospects. If they gain value after their rookie year, they're going to continue to gain value after their second season. If they lose value after their rookie season, they're going to continue to lose value after year two. This is not something we see at the running back position. The running back position is a little bit differently where you can't really predict this. But at wide receiver, you can. So we shouldn't be buying low on someone like Rondale Moore, who lost value. Rashad Bateman's even someone who lost some value that I'm not buying low on. Now, what's interesting is if we look last year, you have Elijah Moore with an ADP of 84 after the NFL draft. And as it stands now, he has an ADP of an early fourth round pick. Elijah Moore has, really gone out there and impressed dynasty owners. He has gained a substantial amount of value, even though I didn't really understand why I loved Elijah Moore last year, but his rookie season wasn't anything special. But it's hard for me to go and say to sell high on Elijah Moore. It's hard to say to sell high on Jalen Waddle, sell high on Jamar Chase, sell high on any of these round one rookie wide receivers that ended up gaining on value after their rookie season based on this continued trend mark. If anything, we should be going out there and buying high on them. And if we are looking at players that are in these ranges of this year's draft class, going back to mid round one for the running backs, you have Kenneth Walker, Isaiah Spiller, and you have Drake London here as well in mid round one for receivers. If you're checking out my dynasty rankings, I'm going to have Drake London ranked ahead of Kenneth Walker, ranked ahead of Isaiah Spiller, despite them all pretty much being neck and neck currently in Dynasty League Football ADP. And the reason for this is Drake London is a player that I'm looking at and saying, okay, he checks every single box. He's an elite level wide receiver prospect. And Kenneth Walker, Isaiah Spiller simply don't. They have their own red flags. So that is a perfect example of the dynasty community propping up these running backs where they probably don't belong when there are still elite level wide receivers on the board. And this is why if you're going over to my dynasty rankings on locals, as I said, go use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy, deposit $10. You can also hop into a draft with me there if you would like, but you get a month-long access of locals, premium content, rookie rankings, yada, yada, yada. And if you go over there and if you look at our one quarterback rankings, you are going to see that out of our top 13 players in our one quarterback rookie rankings, of course, Superflex different, but 10 of them are receivers and 3 of them are running backs. 10 of them are receivers and 3 of them are running backs. When you have the opportunity to take an elite RB at the very top of the draft, you simply cannot pass on it. When you have the opportunity to take Breece Hall, you do everything that you can to get Breece Hall in your roster. But at the same time, please do not be the player in the middle of the first round that is propping up running backs that have red flags that don't deserve to be there over wide receivers that check every single box. Don't be the person drafting Kenneth Walker over Drake London. Don't be the person drafting Isaiah Spiller over Drake London. Historically, it's been a very bad bet. And it makes a lot of sense why as well, if you sit here and really think about it. But I think that should be it for this video. Of course, thank you so much for everybody who's supported. Thank you so much for everybody who's gone out there and gotten their hands on our Dynasty Research book. Please, as I said, of course, I genuinely appreciate all the kind messages, but also give me some constructive criticism as well. Tell me something that I can improve on because, if I don't improve, then we're not going to be around much longer. But thank you again. Hope you have a great day and hope we get to see you with the video tomorrow.